One.
What's up, everyone? My name is Chris Marshall with my good friend Frank G. We are the hosts of Build the Empire podcast. Frank G, tell the people what we do.
What's going on, everybody? Chris and I, we discuss established empires while showcasing us building ours.
Frank G, we go through the journey of building our empire, but we love when people come on the show to tell us theirs.
Yes, sir.
So today we have a wonderful guest. He's done quite a bit, best-selling author, entrepreneur, life coach, currently works at Disney. Artin, welcome to the show.
Thank you guys for having me.
Artin, before we get into extracting as much value as we can from you, why don't you give us a little origin story of you and tell us about who you are?
Sure, and definitely, conscious of time, I'll make sure I won't go too long. So,
take your time.
I'm kind of like an immigrant story, like many others. So, my parents immigrated from Iran to the U.S. Not as simple as it sounds. I'm Armenian as a nationality. So, if you're not familiar with kind of the Armenian genocide and all that happened, 100 plus years ago, a lot of Armenians kind of got dispersed in that Eastern Europe, Middle East area. And that's how my ancestors ended up in Iran. And right after I was born, the Iranian Revolution happened, where the fundamentalist regime took over that's in place now. And it just not only it wasn't a good place to raise children, especially if you were minority Christians living now in a fundamental Muslim country. And I think it was 3 years after that happened, the Iran-Iraq war started. And it wasn't anything sophisticated that we've seen here, like Desert Storm or any of that. It was just Iraqi planes flying over the city, dropping bombs and killing civilians. So we lived through that for about 7 years. And then 87 is when we left the country as refugees to Spain. And Madrid was our home for about a year. And then eventually everything worked out and we made our way to Los Angeles as refugees.
I was going to say, I know you're LA based, and I also see the Kobe jersey in the background framed. Does that motivate you being an immigrant? Did you have leverage on going through all that to essentially excel the way you did, which we'll get into?
Absolutely. And the leverage was that the sacrifices my parents made is always right here in the back of my mind. So to make sure that those sacrifices are not for nothing, that has driven me my entire life, to make sure that I'm making them proud for that unbelievably difficult move they did. They were a lot younger than me today when they did all this move country to country, and not thinking right now at this age, I'm like, oh my God, if I had to pick up my family and move to another country, how the hell would I do it? So it's unbelievable what they did.
Sure. Certainly incredible. And, your journey, I saw that you went to business school in Harvard. You're currently working at Disney for 17, 18 years, in itself, at working that long in one company is an accomplishment.
That's a feat nowadays.
I mean, that just doesn't happen, at least for millennials and certainly Gen Z. And, as well as creating your own path of being a life coach and speaker and creating your own books and, being an author. I mean, how do you do it all?
It's a lot of, people like to use time management. In my book, I talk about habit management because everybody has the same amount of time. It's more around your habits and how you use that time that makes a difference. So I think forcefully had to develop certain habits to make sure that I was not only excelling at my day job, but I was also propelling whatever I was doing on the side to be successful. Whether it was one of my entrepreneur software ventures or it was the book, it always required a very, just managing time very wisely and, using modern tools to delegate and do things in a modern way.
Now, Artin, you're a media exec at Disney and you seem to go through those ranks. You obviously have to love the corporate game to some extent. to continue to stay, right? A lot of entrepreneurs, they work the 9 to 5, create the capital, then hop off, invest in themselves, invest in their vehicle, and propel. You seem to be doing both. And obviously, Disney is a large corporate conglomerate. There's got to be a love there that is unexplainable to a typical entrepreneur there.
Yeah, so it's a great question. I've been asked that many times, like, wow, why have you been there for so long? Two reasons. One, my startup that I had on the side, that the goal was to turn that into a full-time thing, actually got acquired. So
congratulations.
If that had not gotten acquired, thank you. If that had not gotten acquired and kept scaling, it's possible that I would not be at Disney right now. So because that happened, I'm still at Disney. The other reason that I've stuck around in the corporate world, or even any world, who you work for is very important. And I am fortunate enough to have some bosses and leadership above me that are unbelievable. It's that leadership and what value I extract from them and what I learned from them is what kept me there. Not necessarily the Disney name, even though it's an amazing company and the brands that they represent is unbelievable, but to be led by leaders that are true leaders of people and not just managers of projects and process, to me is a game changer. So could I have jumped ship from one corporate to another corporate? Sure. Would the grass be green on the other side? Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. So, but being, have leaders above you that you can learn from and who help you grow is absolutely important. And that's what kept me there for a while.
So you pretty much, what I'm getting from is you're saying the benefits to like a 9 to 5 or a corporate job is all that knowledge that you can acquire and then use to your own ventures, your own abilities. Because I'm kind of doing the similar thing. I work for a company, Salvatore Ferragamo, and I've been there for 6 years now. So I've had multiple positions and I've just acquired so much from all these leaders. And when you find a beautiful company like that, when everyone wants to share their knowledge, it's an incredible thing. Oh,
it's amazing. And you kind of get an expensive MBA without the debt. When you're
it's a good point.
And
experience is the best.
Expand real-time experience, yeah, way better than the MBA. And in my book, I talk about that, how you can leverage.
Artin, real quick, I got to stop you. His book is Side Adventure. Go on Amazon Kindle, right? They can get it there. Side Adventure. We definitely want you to go and read it. We're going to do that as well. Artin, please continue.
Thank you. Yeah. In the book, I talk about how to leverage your day job to establish a foundation, because a lot of people try to jump to a side gig or a side hustle. When it's big enough, I call it a side venture, because it's not a side gig anymore. And what the mistake that I see a lot of people do is they see this fancy ad or funnel on the web that says, oh, make some extra money on the side, or even something bigger that is educational on the web to read. Nobody actually talks about what does it actually take to be successful at a day job, to keep and have successful relationships while pursuing something on the side. It's always, what are the steps on the side, ignoring the fact that, well, somebody has to maintain a day job to do the side thing. And that's what I really go into the book about, how to maintain that and be successful there.
And Artin, having this podcast, scheduling could sometimes be conflicting.
Oh, yeah.
And communicating with you was relatively easy. And we met through a third party. And it makes sense that you understand this, as we try and build something on the side. What I found amazing is how easy you were to communicate with. And I'm fortunate to network, right? That's what we discuss, Frank G and I, how, the keys to success that we think of scaling anything is pure passion, consistency, and networking.
Absolutely. Yeah. The communication part, I think, comes from, I'm a big stickler of customer service. And when I say
as am I.
And I don't say that in the purest sense of there has to be a monetary transaction there to be customer service. I treat my Disney team as my customers. I treat my vendors as my customers. I think there needs to be an understanding that we're all in the same game and helping each other, and to respect each other's time. And that's where I have this internal drive to always make sure I'm not wasting somebody's time, because, you know, time is limited.
That's probably a main reason that you've been so successful at Disney, because that's right there is how you build a successful business, or at least one component, and you nailed it.
Yeah, and it's I have to say that that aspect of my thinking has taken me pretty far in the corporate world, because I'm constantly being put in positions to make a change or transform a business or transform a division.
Well, Artin, that's even evident in coming on the show. You necessarily don't know us, right? You don't know our show to an extent. You just were eager to hop on, and same with us, as to network. And then, you know, that's where it all starts. That's the root, is just a conversation. And then, you know, later on, you know, we may reach out and ask you questions and gather insight. And you just never know where it can go with a simple conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. I read somewhere that when you have you know, there's a lot of people usually go into a networking situation expecting something in return right away. I read somewhere that if you go into a networking opportunity or just building a relationship, it takes about 5 years for you to know why actually you met that person. And that's been so true for me. I've met people that in the beginning, I'm like, oh, this is such a cool person, I just want to get to know them. 5 years later, it turns out they were an investor writing a $500,000.
Serendipity. You never know serendipity.
You never know.
You never know who you're going to meet, what that person is going to become, and then the connection you guys build. I mean, we're just people trying to help people, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I believe you have to be genuine and authentic.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, it won't work out. Eventually, you will lose in the long term.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can only have a front for a certain.
Oh yeah. You can't keep up with that. I mean, we have 100, this is a 122nd episode. If we were fronting this whole time, it would have ended at 30.
Yep, exactly.
It's a good point. Now, Artin, you're a media exec. What exactly do you do? Are you doing social media? You doing TV ads? What is your role, and what would you say your expertise is in?
Yeah. So small origin story there. So when Bob Iger, former CEO of Disney, and Steve Jobs made a deal to put Lost and Grey's Anatomy and some of these shows on the video iPod, to get those TV shows on the video iPod, I officially became employee number 1 in digital distribution, in the operation side of things, and how to actually make that happen. So over the last 15 years, I've become a digital distribution supply chain expert and distributing content to Netflix and iTunes and everywhere else.
Disney Plus.
Disney Plus now, exactly. And then over time, I went from more of a operational execution role to a business strategy role, which is where I'm at now. You know, we've been dealing with the Fox integration and figuring out how to bring one giant company into the other company. And
so, Art, I have this question for you, because Frank and I, you know, we have degrees, but, you know, no crazy schooling, or we didn't go to an Ivy League school or even a university at that. But we're very successful at what we do, which is sales, right? And we're elevating there, which is wonderful. Did you find that there was opportunity from your background in schooling and education?
no.
See, that's amazing to hear.
Yeah, no. I actually went to film school. You know, being in Southern California, you see the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. I used to be kind of an artist drawing, but I decided to take more of the filmmaking artist route. So my background was film school, and I somehow landed in this Disney post-production world, which nothing in film school had taught me. So to understand the business world, the entrepreneurship world, it was books and my own experience.
Like we said earlier, nothing beats that experience.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And relying on other people's experience too. You know, I think books are a wealth of knowledge that can leapfrog you into the next level because you're learning something that somebody took 10 years to learn.
I was gonna say, how
Mhm.
was writing your passion? You know, for you to write a book, and we interviewed an author not too long ago. You know, it's very time consuming, and you know, you have to be passionate in being a writer.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I can't say I'm a passionate being a writer. I'm passionate about telling my
Gigi,
story.
storytelling. Aha.
Storytelling, that's kind of my root. My root was filmmaking, so telling the story. And my book has a lot of stories there. It's not just a
The book is
dry,
side adventure. Side
yeah,
adventure.
it's not just a dry step-by-step guide. It's just all, a lot of stories around the how-to. And the way the book came about, once my previous startup got acquired, uh, is because my wife had gotten pregnant. The startup was in hospitality and nightlife. I didn't want to be up at nightclubs and
At
bars
4
and
a.m.
restaurants and onboarding employees into software and testing. So when the opportunity to be acquired came up, I said yes to it, because reading so many books that I've read, and you try to read these business books or leadership books or biographies, and extract some of the value that they add. There's nuggets in there about parenthood that most people ignore. And I saw a theme there. Everybody that I read, billionaires and others, said, you know what? I'm at the end. I've retired. I wish I had spent more time with my son. I wish I had spent more time with my daughter.
Huge regret.
I'm making it that night. That was one of the biggest regrets. So I said, why would I ignore that advice? So when my wife was pregnant, I made a commitment that I'm going to be an active, present dad, and I will not miss a single moment.
Dad
So that's
first.
why I wanted out. And but I had to itch to do another startup, because that's always in me. And I decided the book to be the startup, because it let me write at home when the kids were napping or they're sleeping at night. So I can still do something and get my creativity flowing without
Mhm.
feeling like I'm not a present dad.
Is that something you started during the 2020 pandemic because no one was leaving the home, or is this something you already thought of? This is my project while I'm home.
Yeah, this was way before. So my son was born in 2018. So
Congratulations.
thank you.
Yes.
Early 18 is when we found out my wife was pregnant. So that's when I made the commitment to write the book. I wanted to finish it before he was born.
Mhm.
You don't know what you don't know. I was a first time writer. So it actually took, instead of 9 months, it took 3 years to finish it.
Well,
So the
again,
last leg of it.
I mean, we had an author. We asked him the same question: how long did it take you to write the book? He said about 2 years. So it
Yeah,
makes sense.
Yeah.
People underestimate how difficult and long the process of a book is.
it is. It is. And, it's a very interesting experience, because unless you're, you know, writing Harry Potter or some major books like that, there isn't a lot of money in books. And a lot of people know that. You guys being in sales, you know that it could be more of a kind of a loss leader to kind of go to the next.
I was going to ask you. I imagine, and I could be wrong. You self-published the book. You may have had a publisher, but who did the marketing, if any?
It is self-published. I did the marketing, but I hired an agency to kind of do all of the administrative work for me, just because I didn't have the time. So I set the
Sure.
strategy and hired an agency to help me execute on it.
Makes perfect sense. Side adventure. Get it on Amazon. We'll try and help you any way we could.
Thank you.
So what was real quick, just because we're on the topic of your book, and we did, like we said, interviewed an author recently. What was the most difficult hurdle in writing that book?
The difficult hurdle is the first 3 chapters,
First 3.
because you just have so many thoughts in your head,
Mhm.
and it's easy to talk yourself out of it, saying, oh my God,
Oh
I don't know
yeah.
what to do. Once you get through 3 chapters, now you feel like you're in it. Like you can't back out anymore. So the momentum helps you finish it. But that first 3 chapters is the most difficult, because you don't know where to start. You outline it something, you're like, this is crap, and outline it again. But once you're done with the 3 chapters, you kind of get in a flow, you have momentum, you
Mhm.
see the finish line now and kind of get excited about it.
do you see yourself writing more books, or do you see yourself going down a different path as, truly being a keynote speaker and traveling and giving advice that way, or creating your own podcast, or is writing the outlet?
I'm interested in writing another one. I have the topic and outline for it. I don't know when I will get to it, but I definitely, my focus will be more on the keynote speaking side of things, and kind of sharing my knowledge.
Which, keynote and public speaking certainly took an interesting turn in 2020.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully that, is opening up, and you certainly could travel and do that. Yeah, we had a TED speaker come on, and I was so impressed how he got to that gig. And ultimately, he said that the formula was to have published books and to write.
Right.
So it seems like you're on that path.
Yeah, the book kind of gives you that you're kind of an authority in that subject matter.
Yeah, it's graspable knowledge.
Yeah, so it kind of automatically gives you that gravitas, saying, okay, this guy's an expert in something.
So, I mean, you said you were an artist, you went to film school, you're an author. I'm just curious, and you may not even be able to give a number to this. How many failed ventures were there?
That's a great question.
Great question. So after film school and landing at Disney, I actually had a really close friend of mine, still a close friend of mine, that went to film school. We landed at Disney together. A year and a half into it, we're like, wait a minute, this is not what we signed up for. So we started kind of going down the route of writing scripts and producing music videos and commercials on the side. None of them took off. Failures there. We had a script that almost sold. It's a very interesting story. It's in the book. And then, and this was 2005-06 post.com bubble, and I saw that a lot of money is being thrown at technology. So let me see what that's about. Mm-hmm. And I have to say I failed miserably, probably for about 7 or 8 attempts on software, because I had no idea what I was doing. Sure, I helped build some internal business system at Disney, but that's very different from trying to build a
something yourself
product that either you want people to use or pay to use. Mm-hmm. So it took about 7 or 8 pretty big failures until I had that one success where about $4 million got raised, and we built a pretty large platform.
Now, mentally, how do you handle that? Now, in some way, you also are a salesman, right? You have to be. For everything that Absolutely. You're doing, you are a salesman. So salesmen, we get used to rejection. We understand it. But as an entrepreneur who is not instinctively good at sales, the mental aspect could become overwhelming.
Yeah. You're right. I don't consider myself a salesman, but I am a salesman because I have to sell my ideas, and the entrepreneurship is about sales. And if you don't know sales, that's the first thing you need to start. Understand sales before you become an entrepreneur. I even going back to high school, even grade school, I never actually looked at failure as failure.
Learning experience.
I always looked at it as a learning experience. And being a sports fan and a huge NBA basketball fan, I kind of saw failures about just like you're falling down and you keep getting up. You're falling down and you keep getting up. I mean, that's what you do playing a game. You fall down, Absolutely. Go for a shot, you fall down, you get up. So there's nothing to fear. When people use, the word failure, it just, I think it's a bad way to describe it, first of all, because I know everybody uses, you fail fast, fail this. Well, you can fail at something that has a detrimental impact, but you can fail at something that has almost zero impact on your life. So failure is such a wide spectrum of what it could be. So I never looked at failure that way, because failure to my mind was always that major thing that shouldn't happen. Like, well, don't run a red light to get in a car accident. That's failure.
Yeah.
But in business, to attempt something and have it not work, I just never saw it as failure. I'm like, I'm just, I'm going to fall down and get back up again.
Yeah, well, because it's if there's 10,000 ways it didn't work, you realistically, what'd you take from that? And also now you learn 10,000 ways
Apply it.
how to apply it in a different way.
And you only need to be right once, as Mark Cuban says.
Exactly. That's all you need to be is right once. And it's, it's very similar to like day trading or venture capitalists, you got to hit one time. And once that hits, all the failures go away.
I did read a little quote, I think that was about you, that you believe that everybody is one idea away from happiness.
Yeah, that's the core message of the book, actually, that you're just one idea away from happiness. And, that's what everybody, I feel like, is chasing, a emotion. Nobody is buying the car because they want the car, or the big house because they want a big house. That house or the car is making them feel a certain way. So everybody is chasing an emotion.
Beautifully
and
said.
Happiness seems to be the most common one. So you're just one idea away from that. So if you keep that in mind, then you're not going to think about failure, because you're like, okay, this is that one. I'm going to try the next one because I'm just one idea away from whatever my happiness is.
We often say when we interview people and have people come on the show, is that the show essentially is, we all want the same destination, which is success and happiness. It's just every one of us has a different path and journey to get there.
Yep.
And, it's sad when you see people look at money the way the majority do, when the real question is, are you happy? It's purely based on your happiness. I'd rather be a broke man with a loving family than a rich man with a private jet.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Selling mangoes on a beach or something.
Yeah. And, that comes down to your maturity level of your own purpose.
Yeah.
And what level of your understanding of your purpose is in life. I talk about purpose a lot when I speak, or even, internal to teens, because I give the example of, well, you look at, people like Bill Gates or some other philanthropists that are giving away money at causes. Well, that's a purpose. They are now fulfilling something that's greater themselves. A lot of people can't do that. So I asked the question, how do you think people fulfill that purpose? Not everybody, but a big population. And the answer is they're becoming parents, because becoming a parent,
That's a great answer.
Yeah.
without knowing, and most people don't know this, it just happens instinctively. Without knowing, your purpose now becomes that kid or multiple kids in your life to make sure they're growing up. And that's how you fulfill that feeling of you have a purpose in life. And it's a fascinating concept as you talk about it, because
it really is. Frank G and I, and I'm sorry to cut you off real quick. We just always talk about purpose and how people outside of having trauma or death, who are typically depressed, seem to have lack of purpose.
Yeah, and it's just lack of maturity and understanding where they are, and sometimes just by default becoming a parent fills that void.
Is the purpose.
Yeah, and it's their purpose. And it's interesting when you mentioned about some kind of trauma or something that happened in somebody's life that gives them that purpose. Unfortunately, that is true. Somebody has a family member die, but it doesn't have to be that way. I think it just self-education and really understanding yourself better can get you there too.
Yeah, I know understanding your own emotions is a huge part of it, that emotional IQ. And yeah, people could go through traumas and be affected by them for years until they find some type of understanding and what it brought to them.
Yeah. Self-awareness is a magical skill.
Yes.
If you could master self-awareness, it helps you in a lot of places, including in the workplace. Because if you're aware that, you know what, I'm actually not good speaking in front of this group, you can do something about it. Or it doesn't seem like marketing is an expertise of mine. Let me try something out. Just self-awareness becomes really critical for yourself, and vice versa, kind of empathy, being able to put yourself in the other person's shoes
which is what you preach. You preach a lot of EQ, and Frank and I we do as well. I like to think my EQ is significantly higher than my IQ, and I don't underestimate the power of the emotional intelligence.
it's sometimes EQ can get you farther in life than IQ.
I believe that.
Yeah.
I
I mean,
believe
it's what makes us human, right? All our emotions.
Exactly.
Now,
Uh,
Artin, we have 7 minutes, and Frank, I'll ask you 1 second. 7 minutes before the Zoom ends here. Frank, I guess you ask your question because I got one coming up right now.
I do have one. I'm curious, just because 18 years is a long time to work in a space
Very long.
that deals with technology. What stands out in the difference of what technology was 18 years ago than it is today?
Wow, great question.
VHS.
Yeah, when I started, it was VHS distribution, and
Wow.
DVD was becoming this huge thing.
The new kid on the block.
The new kid on the block. And then at some point, Blu-ray came into the space. Around the same time that Blu-ray was launching, digital distribution started, but it was just a little thing on iTunes, or just very little. Now you're talking streaming, and it's changed the game. It's definitely changed how people consume content.
Absolutely.
Going to theaters, who knows what that future is going to look like. And Disney risking and kind of testing how releasing a movie on streaming and at the theater at the same time. That's a lot of data they're collecting.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not in that area of the business, or not even at my pay grade, but I'm sure they're capturing a lot of data to understand what that future will look like.
And let me ask you this, and maybe you can provide insight. It's a question I've had recently. Is obviously streaming's taken over, and all these networks and conglomerates are creating their own service, and then they're charging $7.99, $11.99, whether it's Disney Plus, HBO Max, everything. The consumer is going to have 4, 5, 6, 7 of these, which ultimately is cable. You might as well combine them all and then sell it as one package. And I can see in 5, 10 years, we just they're repackaging cable.
Yep, it is. The only difference here is that when you have cable, 80% of the channels are probably nothing you watch.
Not used. More than that.
And on
95.
commercials.
Yeah. At least in today's world, you're spending the same amount of money, but you have control.
It's true.
To me, that's the only difference. It's definitely not a cost-saving thing. It's more of you have a choice now, a voice, instead of just being told, pay us $100 and you're going to get 1,000 channels, and we don't care if you don't watch 900 of them.
It's not even paying for a premium almost, because I mean Netflix and Disney Plus is like $10, $20 depending on how many TVs they're on.
Yeah,
I could totally see. That's a great question, to be honest. That was a great question.
I tell you, I know, and I don't know, but 17 years in Disney, hopefully they give you some stock share. Artin, I know you're smiling. I know you're smiling, my friend. I got to ask you, if we were to give you $20,000, or if you come across $20,000, what are you taking that and what are you investing in? Whether it is the stock market, particular stocks, whether it's a side hustle, what are you doing with that 20K?
So I am a pretty active investor on the side, whether it's real estate, the stock market, and I also dabble a little bit in cryptocurrency. If I were just to find 20 grand right now, I would split that. 10,000 of that, I'll go and be an angel investor in a startup. You're rolling the dice, it's found money. So let's roll the dice and put it in a startup that might be blowing up at some point in the future or die. The other 10, I would go into the stock market and put it into a technology company, either one of the big, the FANG stocks, or some other technology company that you believe in.
Fascinating answer. I had to get that off. Frank, I'll let you ask a question real quick. Artin, obviously, I'm assuming you're a Laker fan. How do you feel about the Bucks winning, and are you a LeBron guy? You have to be a LeBron guy.
Actually, I will tell you. I'm happy for Bucks and Giannis. I think he went beast mode, and he deserves it.
Sure
so
did.
I'm very happy for him. I'm actually not a LeBron fan.
Something told me that he's a Laker guy, but not a LeBron guy. I had to ask.
I saw it on his face when he asked the question.
There's deeply rooted history there why I'm not a LeBron fan. Over the course of the last 15, 20 years, obviously there was this divide in the NBA world of Kobe fans and LeBron fans.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The LeBron fans, as from my vantage point, were very active in trashing Kobe. I never got into that conversation because I was thought I'm a Kobe fan. I like just what Kobe brought to the game. To me, I like better than
The
LeBron.
mentality.
Yeah.
Mentality, yeah, and because of my own personal beliefs and leadership, I just loved Kobe. Not to say LeBron is not a great
Of
player, but
course,
because of the fan hostility, I was not a LeBron fan. And then when he came to Lakers, I still to today, I have
Feel
this,
some type of way.
I can't, it's hard for me to root for them, but then if I don't root for them, I feel bad. Like I
Yeah.
have this really weird thing going on in my brain.
Artin, I once rode an elevator with Kobe Bryant, but did not think it was Kobe Bryant because why would Kobe
Why would
Bryant
he
be in my elevator?
Yeah.
It was the most. I was so sad. The end of
Mhm.
that elevator when everybody started fanboying and oh my God, it's Kobe, and I'm like the whole ride. I'm like, damn, he looks like Kobe, but there's no way. And yeah, that was a story.
Yeah, I mean, the day that he passed away, I was
Yeah.
just tears.
One
It
of
was-
the few celebrity deaths that did affect me.
Me
Frankie,
too.
you have one last question?
I do. So I'm curious. This is another your choice kind of question.
We have 30 seconds.
So you worked with legendary brands at Disney, Star Wars, Pixar, Marvel. What's your favorite?
I would say Pixar is my favorite.
Pixar.
Yeah, I love the original animations.
Okay.
I love the Marvel characters. I've never been a comic guy, and I love the Star Wars stories, but never was a Star Wars geek.
Okay.
But I just love the animated stories.
I would actually agree with you. Love Pixar, the animated stories. Artin, we can't thank you enough for giving us your time and our listeners your value and your story. Side Adventure, Amazon, go get it. Artin, again, thank you so much. We truly appreciate it.
No, thank you guys. This was amazing.
We
We will
appreciate
keep
you.
in touch. Do you have an Instagram that we can follow?